The ground trembled beneath advancing steel. Allied armor rolled forward with unstoppable momentum, yet in desperate hands lay a crude weapon that would change everything. 8 million units produced, each one cheaper than standard military footwear. But these simple tubes could punch through the heaviest armor plating. No artillery piece could match their killing power. Children gripped them in war's final hours. The story behind this terror runs deeper than most imagine. Rubble filled Berlin's streets in 1945. Smoke drifted between collapsed buildings. Tank treads crushed debris as Allied forces pushed deeper. Only the grinding of mechanical beasts broke the eerie quiet. Boys barely out of childhood clutched these weapons. Old men with trembling fingers held them tight. Each device looked deceptively simple. A hollow steel cylinder. A warhead perched like death waiting to strike. One trigger squeeze unleashed hellish fire backward. The blast scorched everything behind the shooter. Molten copper jets screamed forward at incredible speed. Even the thickest Allied armor couldn't withstand the impact. These disposable killers flooded the battlefield. Factories churned out millions upon millions, more than any tank production line, more than rifle manufacturing. This weapon promised infantry a fighting chance against endless mechanized columns. But using it meant embracing death. 30 meters maximum range, 20 meters for accuracy, sometimes much closer. Machine gun fire would find you. Tank treads would crush you. Survival seemed impossible. Popular media shows sanitized versions. Video games make it look heroic. Movies skip the darkest truths. This wasn't just military hardware. This weapon tells a story of complete desperation, of children facing down war machines, of fire-consuming users and targets alike. Tonight, that hidden history emerges. Not statistics about tank kills, not technical specifications, but the human cost of desperation made manifest. Soviet armor shocked German forces by 1942. The Eastern Front became a graveyard of burning metal. Columns that had swept through Poland and France suddenly met their match. Russian tanks belonged to a different generation entirely. T-34 medium tanks rolled with sloped armor plating. Shells bounced away like thrown stones. KV-1 heavy tanks carried armor so thick that direct hits barely scratched the surface. German anti-tank weapons failed completely. Victory parades turned into funeral marches. The standard 37mm anti-tank gun earned bitter nicknames. Door knocker became its most common title. Crews watched shells ping harmlessly off Soviet steel, like hammering iron gates with wooden sticks. Upgraded 50mm weapons struggled just as badly. Tank crews stared in horror as T-34s pushed through their fire. Machine guns blazing from turrets, tracks grinding forward relentlessly. Everything in their path got flattened. Anti-tank rifles became museum pieces overnight. Light armor could still be penetrated, but these new Soviet monsters laughed at rifle rounds. Magnetic charges existed as options. Mines could disable tracks, but both required suicidal approaches. Crawling under moving tanks meant certain death. Climbing onto hulls while guns fired was madness. The Reich desperately needed new solutions. Something portable for every foot soldier. Something manufacturable in massive quantities. Larger cannons wouldn't work in infantry hands. Heavier tanks took too long to produce. The answer had to be revolutionary, yet simple. Engineers sketched recoilless tube designs, weapons firing shaped charges that melted armor like candle wax. Germany faced an existential crisis. Soviet offensives grew bolder each month. Villages fell like dominoes. Cities crumbled under tank assaults. No defensive line could hold without giving every soldier tank-killing capability. Urgency drove innovation at breakneck speed. The Panzerfaust emerged from desperate necessity. One shot per tube, one chance per soldier. A weapon transforming ordinary infantry into armored vehicle hunters. The price was always blood. Standing close enough to guarantee hits. Close enough to die from return fire. Crude appearance masked deadly sophistication. Steel tubing housed revolutionary technology. Wooden trigger mechanisms kept costs minimal. Warheads balanced precariously above launch tubes. Everything designed for single-use disposal. Recoilless launching eliminated kickback problems. Factory-loaded tubes required no field preparation. Black powder charges sat ready for ignition. Trigger pulls sent warheads screaming forward while flames erupted rearward. Zero recoil meant accurate shooting, but backblast created killing zones behind shooters. 10-meter danger radius meant instant incineration for anyone nearby. Red warning labels covered every tube. Achtung Feuerstrahl warned in bold letters. Danger fire stream in simple German. Soldiers learned to clear areas before firing. Too many comrades died from friendly fire. The weapon killed from both ends equally. Hollow charge technology delivered the killing blow. Copper cones focused explosive energy into concentrated jets. Impact created molten streams slicing through solid steel. 140 mm penetration from early models. 180 mm from improved versions. Eventually 200 mm from final designs. No Allied armor could ignore these numbers. Sherman tanks became death traps. Even heaviest Soviet monsters faced destruction. But effective range remained cruelly short. First Panzerfaust 30 models carried 10 cm warheads. 30-meter maximum range demanded incredible courage. Tank crews could see infantry approaching. Machine guns had ample time for killing. Panzerfaust 30 gross upgraded warhead size to 15 cm. Penetration increased dramatically. Heavy armor finally became vulnerable. Millions flooded from production lines across Germany. 1944 brought Panzerfaust 60 improvements. Double the range theoretically possible. Better accuracy at distance. Same devastating warhead design. Mass production continued at frantic pace. Late war Panzerfaust, 100 models carried 6-kilogram warheads. Over 220 mm armor penetration capability. 100-meter range in perfect conditions. Reality meant much closer shooting in practice. Final Panzerfaust, 150 featured sleek redesign. Pointed warheads improved ballistics. Two-stage propellant systems increased power. 300 mm penetration exceeded any existing armor. But production came too late. Planned Panzerfaust, 250 never reached troops. Reloadable designs remained on drawing boards. The Reich collapsed before advanced weapons deployed. Each version grew more powerful. Each demanded greater sacrifice. All shared the same fatal flaw. Effective use required suicidal proximity to targets. Engineering merged with gambling. Steel tubes against armored empires. Blood always paid the price. September 1943 marked battlefield deployment. Eastern Front received first shipments. Battered German infantry tore open crates with desperate hope. Complex training wasn't necessary. Point and fire seemed simple enough. Suddenly, single soldiers could halt entire tank columns. Tactics evolved overnight from necessity. Small groups armed themselves and waited. Hidden positions in rubble provided concealment. T-34 engines rumbled closer through broken streets. Ground vibrations increased steadily. Exhaust fumes thickened the air. Vulnerable tank flanks eventually appeared within range. Ambush timing became everything. One shot created one smoke plume. Steel giants collapsed in roaring flames. Successful hits looked miraculous to observers. Panzer commandos earned their fearsome reputation through such tactics. Lives hung on split-second timing decisions. Fire too early, and warheads missed moving targets. Fire too late, and machine guns shredded ambush positions. Sprint patterns after shooting meant survival. Covering rifle fire protected escaping hunters. Brutal effectiveness couldn't be denied. Cheap tubes destroyed machines, costing fortunes to build. Western Front adoption followed in 1944. Normandy's hedgerow country became hunting grounds. Sherman and Churchill tank crews advanced cautiously. Infantry screens became mandatory protection against unseen killers. Losses mounted to staggering proportions. Nearly one-third of Normandy tank casualties came from handheld weapons. Panzerfausts topped the killing list consistently. Urban warfare transformed the weapon into absolute nightmare. Narrow streets channeled armor into killing zones. Shattered buildings provided perfect firing positions. Rubble created maze-like ambush sites. Warsaw's uprising demonstrated urban effectiveness. Aachen's street fighting proved the concept. Berlin's final battle became a masterclass in close-range tank hunting. Windows, basements, and alleyways spawned death from every direction. Tank crews welded improvised protection onto hulls. Logs, tracks, even bed frames became armor additions. Nothing guaranteed protection against shaped charge penetration. Fear became constant companion for armored units. Allied soldiers coined the term ghost weapon. Shooters remained invisible until firing. Only ignition cracks announced attacks. Thunder of impact followed immediately. Nearby tanks erupted without warning. Crews cursed the weapon's effectiveness. Fear and respect grew in equal measure. Tactical doctrines shifted completely across all armies. No armor entered cities without infantry cover. Clearing operations preceded tank movements. Room-by-room searches became standard procedure. Eastern Front statistics told grim stories. Soviet generals raged at casualty reports. Up to 70% of tank losses came from infantry weapons, not Tiger tanks or 80 mm guns. Disposable tubes in hidden hands caused the damage. Terror defined Panzerfaust deployment patterns, not open battlefield duels between equals, alley fighting, hedgerow ambushes, and surprise attacks. Empires rethought armored vehicle movement completely. Every ruined street became potential death trap. Urban warfare would never be the same. Spring 1945 brought Berlin's collapse. The Reich's final illusion shattered completely. Factory warehouses released their desperate answer. Crates of Panzerfausts distributed without discrimination. Trained soldiers no longer existed in sufficient numbers. Volkssturm formations received these deadly gifts. Boys and elderly men gripped steel tubes with shaking hands. People's storm units born from absolute despair rather than military strength. 16-year-old children stood at street corners. Steel weapons too heavy for thin arms. Soviet armor approached with mechanical inevitability. Crude sights lined up on moving targets. Trigger fingers squeezed with desperate determination. Flame jets illuminated surrounding walls briefly. Impossible victories seemed momentarily real. Giant machines collapsed from single shots. Then turrets swung toward muzzle flashes. Machine guns ended young lives instantly. Wars concluded before they properly began. This scene repeated endlessly throughout collapsing cities. Berlin, Vienna, Königsberg witnessed identical tragedies. Makeshift fighters emerged from doorways to face steel beasts at point-blank range. Some shots found their marks perfectly. Machines that crossed half a continent died in street corners. Many more shooters never saw home again. Panzerfausts provided power without promising escape routes. Every tank kill cost human lives. Sometimes individuals paid the price. Sometimes entire squads disappeared after single ambush attempts. Allied crews recognized patterns quickly. Sudden blasts followed by burning vehicles, then lifeless bodies clutching empty tubes. Boys and old men lay motionless nearby, still gripping their single-shot weapons. Propaganda spoke of heroic citizen defenders. Reality revealed unfolding tragedy in real time. Nations so desperate that children faced war machines, armed only with courage and suicide weapons. Climax of Panzerfaust history wasn't triumph. Futility marked its final chapter. Weapons promising salvation delivered only graves instead. Germany's streets became launch pads and tombs simultaneously. Once hailed infantry savior revealed darkest truth. Usually tanks survived encounters. Men who dared fire died instead. May 1945, silence didn't erase Panzerfaust influence. Crude shapes littered battlefields from Stalingrad to Berlin. Allied soldiers collected discarded tubes as grim souvenirs, reminders of how closely death had stalked them. But weapons influence was just beginning. Soviet engineers examined captured examples carefully. Design simplicity impressed technical teams. 4 years later, RPG-2 appeared. Reloadable launcher echoing Panzerfaust principles, but refined for modern warfare. That design spawned entire families of rocket-propelled grenades. Cold War conflicts from Asia to Africa featured descendants. Modern insurgencies proved single men with tubes could challenge armored columns effectively. Allied lessons proved equally important. Tanks could never again move alone regardless of armor thickness. Infantry screens became permanent doctrine. Combined arms tactics evolved from necessity. Improvised defenses like mesh skirts and sandbag armor became standard features. Panzerfaust forced armies to acknowledge simple truth. Mightiest machines could fall to humblest weapons. Modern doctrine still reflects those hard-learned lessons. Museum displays show rusted Panzerfausts behind protective glass. Inert and apparently harmless now. But shadows stretch long across military history. Ancestors of modern bazookas and shoulder-fired missiles. Descendants of RPG families worldwide. Cheap, disposable weapons altered battlefield power balances permanently. Nations learned that desperation breeds innovation alongside tragedy. Germany's bitter aftermath reflected Panzerfaust's ultimate failure. Weapons didn't save the collapsing Reich. Red Army and Allied forces ground warfare to inevitable conclusion. What Panzerfausts accomplished was consuming lives of forced wielders. Civilians, boys, elderly men turned into unwilling soldiers. Historical reckoning measures success in multiple currencies. Tanks destroyed versus blood spilled. Lives of people weapons supposedly protected. Fire from both ends burned away entire generations. Symbols transcend mere military hardware. Panzerfaust represented ingenuity born from absolute necessity. Courage twisted by complete desperation. War reduced to brutal mathematical equations. 1 man plus 1 shot equals 1 chance. For Germany, it proved too little arriving too late. No quantity of tubes could halt steel avalanches rolling from east and west simultaneously. Impact cannot be completely denied, though. Previously invincible tanks crawled through rubble cautiously. Infantry shields protected every movement. Generals rewrote tactical manuals completely. Crews welded makeshift armor onto vehicle hulls. Entire strategies shifted because of weapons costing almost nothing to manufacture. True cost wasn't measured in destroyed steel. Lives paid the real price. Boys who should have attended school. Fathers too old for military service. Civilians dragged from homes and forced to confront tanks with hollow tubes. They became triggers and targets simultaneously. Sacrifice wasn't voluntary or heroic. Regimes in death throes demanded these payments. Today's descendants appear in distant conflicts. RPGs threatening armored vehicles worldwide. Shaped charges evolved from Panzerfaust DNA. Weapons design endures across decades, but stories carry eternal warnings. Technology can be simple, effective, even brilliant. When wielded through desperation, it consumes users as surely as targets. Innovation and tragedy intertwine inseparably. Triumph of engineering or tragedy of sacrifice? Weapon that leveled battlefields or devoured its own users? Answers lie not in tank kill statistics. They rest with voices lost beneath blast roars. Fire burned from both ends of these crude tubes. Users and targets died together. Desperation created weapons that demanded ultimate sacrifice. Children and elderly paid prices for adult failures. Modern conflicts still echo with Panzerfaust lessons. Simple weapons in desperate hands remain dangerous to sophisticated armies. But human cost never decreases. Technology advances while tragedy endures. History remembers innovation while forgetting sacrifice. Steel tubes outlived their makers completely. Design principles spread across continents, but stories remain tied to rubble and loss forever. War reduced to its most brutal essence. One desperate shot against impossible odds. For dying regimes, it was never enough. For those forced to fire, it meant everything.